Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax. Except you, that person driving. Sit up and keep your eyes on the road. Your ears, though, can still listen as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, the New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
I'm Rob. Let's get the show on the road.
What kind of road are we going on? Where are we going?
Maybe we'll be going on the Yellow Brick Road.
Oh.
Giant.
Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Follow the Yellow Brick Road.
Follow the Big Blue Road.
Oh, yes. As we go on our trip to discussing the top corners in New York Giants history. And I got to say, this is a group that when we started doing this, I wasn't like, let's look at spots that we're going to have trouble finding people that are quality people. I did not expect corner to be as difficult to find quality players over the years. And I got to say, it was difficult. This was not one of the easier groups to go ahead and find.
No, it's not like the linebacker episode.
Yeah, we still haven't even done yet a full linebacker episode. We just did a pass rusher one, but it's like that one's going to be like, okay, here's a bunch of Hall of Famers.
Yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Which also goes hand in hand why we don't need such good corners.
Yeah, now instead it's like, okay, well, here's some guys. So, I'll give you guys the heads up. Usually when we do this, we've talked about it before. We do, okay, if you made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro, you're an automatic in. If you made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro as a New York Giant. And in this case here, we always like to have like 10 people on each show at a minimum. Well, we had 7 corners get a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro in Giants history. That's it.
Gotta stretch the imagination a little bit.
We definitely had to go, okay, who had a long career at least with the Giants and helped contribute to making the Giants a success that they are? And keep in mind that the corner position was not what it was, back. It's just not like where we did the centers and the guards and all. And you're like, okay, well, back in 1932, like they didn't really have like corners and stuff like that back then. The position,
yeah, but it wasn't the same.
They just had defensive backs. There was no specific role. So you're really looking at basically like, the late 50s and onward.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before. The Giants with Eli Manning and in those days, we won because of pass rush. We didn't win because of the corners. Don't get me wrong. The corners contributed. I'm not trying to be like a schmuck about it. But it wasn't like you were like, oh, look at that shutdown corner. That's why the Giants got the ring. Like,
no, look at that gap between Strahan.
Yeah. That wasn't.
And the line he just ran.
Even in the Parcells years at that point, it wasn't like the cover corners is why we were winning Super Bowls. Winning Super Bowls because of LT and the defense that we had outside of the corners at that point there. So,
but it goes back to what I was saying before. You got a strong linebacker crew. You got a good back there. Like you don't need. Well, let's just say you don't need, but it kind of diminishes the play that you have at the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it didn't become as important a need because of everything else we had in the teams. So, all right, let's go right down to number 10. Number 10. And I'm telling you, there's a couple of names we're looking at here. And we decided to get help from a certain pop singer to find out what happened.
Yeah.
We asked Jordan Sparks who should be number 10. And she suggested her father, Felipe Sparks. No, we didn't actually speak to Jordan Sparks. It's just... It's just, to me, it was funny. I couldn't believe when I figured out that was Felipe's kid. I was like, well, wait. I didn't ever put 2 and 2 together. I was like, Sparks, okay, it's a pop star name. No, she was just born with a pop star name. That actually is her name. So Felipe Sparks was a 2nd-round pick from the Giants in 1992. Played with the Giants from 92 to 99. So a nice long career with the Giants overall. Yeah, like, whenever you can start 8 years at a corner position with one team, that's a nice career overall. He did play one last season with the Cowboys. We're going to forgive him on that one there. But overall, like I said, good career. He was a solid corner. for 8 years. He was never okay, this guy can take your top receiver out of the game, but he was the guy that you didn't have to worry about against most receivers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and he was a good enough threat. Maybe not the right word, but like he didn't embarrass himself against a lot of times you can say players.
No.
So.
You know, and you know, he paired with a guy that we're going to talk about in a minute to be a pretty dang good, you know, corner duo there for the 1990s overall. And you know, he was corner 2 for those years, but he was just, like I said, a very solid corner that was probably, to be very frank, undervalued by the Giants for some years there, because anytime you're starting 8 solid years, that's a position for almost a decade you just didn't have to worry about. Felipe, we're putting Felipe there. We don't have to worry about this. We're good.
Yeah. Oh, we gotta get a new agreement. Oh, we got Felipe. It's fine. Yeah, there we go.
Exactly. So, all right. Next up, we have his teammate.
Ooh.
Jason Sehorn, second-round pick of the Giants in 1994. Played with the Giants from 94 to 2002. Played with the Rams also in 2003. And this is a case of, you know, like you look back on certain players and you go, what could have been? What could have been? I mean, I remember playing, and now I'm going to age myself here now. The first time
he was Ihorn.
The first time that I was able to have my own video game console as a kid, like not a little handheld, but an actual video game console you play on the TV and everything, was the PS1. With the PS1, I had Madden 99. I could practically tell you every single player in their rankings because I played it so much. I was obsessed with it. I remember years later, I broke it out again, like 10 years later, and started using it again randomly for nostalgia. So Jason Sehorn was the second highest rated corner to Deion Sanders in that game. That's how well thought of he was. Yeah, second rate. Keep in mind, this is right after the 97 season, because even though it's 99, it's the 98 season. So if you're talking about, you know, Peyton Manning's rookie year, you know, you still had guys like Dan Marino and Warren Moon and some of the really old timers still playing, you know, but it was, like I said, he was the second highest rated corner in Madden that year. And this was a case of what could have been, because people saw how good he was getting. This guy was becoming an absolute shutdown corner. And then the Adoree Jackson did. Jason Sehorn gets hurt on special teams and was just never the same player again. Just never was. You know, he tore 2 knee ligaments. So it wasn't like it was just a slight injury. No, this man basically ripped up his entire...
His skin looked like this from his kneecap.
Yeah, it's entire knee.
Yeah.
Had 5 interceptions, 96, 6 interceptions, 97. And they decided to get him involved. Jim Fossil put him in the special teams at that point because he was very good as a returner. So, yeah, I mean, here's a quote from Jim Fossil on this, because he was asked when he put him back there before the injury happened about, you know, whether or not there was concerns over Jason Sehorn getting hurt. Jim Fossil's exact quote: "Returning kicks is not a play where the ball carrier gets hurt very often." That quote does not look very good now.
No,
yeah.
That definitely did not age well.
Now, here's the worst part. It was a preseason game. It wasn't even a regular season game. It was a preseason game in August against the Jets. And like I said, he did return. He did play some more seasons with the Giants. But he was never, I'm telling you right now, he would have end up being one of the top 3 or 4 corners, if not the top corner in Giants history, if this injury did not happen. He was that good.
Yeah,
This goes down as one of the worst injuries in Giants history because of what it did to this man's career. Absolute travesty.
Yeah, it's a shame because some guys, like we've talked about this before, like that just don't come back from injury like other guys can. Like some guys could, I hate to put it like that, but they can walk it off. But other guys, yeah.
Are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah, walk it off. But I mean, some guys just they psychologically they can't heal from it, and some guys physically can't heal from it.
Yeah.
Some guys just don't even think about it. You know, like, yeah, whatever, if I get hurt again.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't have the same speed. I mean, it's bad enough when you tear one ligament. To tear two? That's crazy.
I just can't surgery with.
We got John saying Super Drew and Black Roberto. No, Rob's still white today.
It's true. I haven't changed.
Much like Jason
Raffle Ron.
You know, it says, I remember him proposing to Angie Harmon on one of those late shows, had 3 daughters, now they're divorced. Yeah, that was on the Jay Leno show. I remember that very much.
And Jay Leno's chin.
He had it was like one of those things where like I really hope that was orchestrated, because if you propose to somebody on the Jay Leno show when they're there to do a promo for a TV show they're doing, yeah, you better know they're gonna say yes.
Imagine saying no for millions of people. Oh, talk about an ego crusher.
That was, I believe she was doing a thing for Rizzo and Isles or whatever the name of that show was. It was a lawyer show she was on. I want to say TBS or TNT, one of those Turner channels back then. And she was just on there as a guest to talk about the show. And next thing you know, Jason Sehorn randomly comes out. And I remember I was actually watching that show live. And I had no clue. Obviously, no one knew it was going to happen. And I'm like, what the hell is Jason Sehorn coming out? I knew it was him, immediately. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then all of a sudden, like, oh, this is her boyfriend. I'm like, oh, okay, they're no dating. And next thing you know, he's proposing. I'm like, oh my God. That's kind of crazy. He is remarried. I think it's his 3rd wife he's on now, actually. I think I mentioned before I got the chance to meet him when I was a kid and at an autograph thing. And he was a very nice guy to all the fans, don't get me wrong. But if you're a young, attractive female fan, he was very nice to you. I'll put it that way. That man had some game, that's for sure.
And it has the money and looks. So.
Yeah, he was not hurting at that point there, unlike his knee.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next one here. And then we can get into guys that did make Pro Bowls and All Pros. And not to say these guys didn't contribute to the Giants, because they were still good players. It's just if they played most positions with the accolades they had, they wouldn't make the top 10 players. Ben Corbett says, anyone know if Jason Sehorn has more wives than interceptions? No, he has plenty. We just went over. He had 11 in 2 seasons at that point there. He didn't have 11 wives, okay?
That you know.
And I know of. Who knows?
No.
He may be a bigamist. I don't know.
Hey.
Every time I think of that word, I think of Groucho Marx. So Groucho Marx, the classic comedian there, when he was doing one of the Marx Brothers movies, he was in the scene. He's like, he was already married. He was hitting on another woman because she was rich. And she's like, that's bigamy. He's like, that's big of all of us. Groucho, one of the best comedians of all time. Deb says, my memory of Sparks was that he played with heart at a time when the team wasn't playing well. That's an extremely valid point. Felipe Sparks did not get to play during the good years. Like, he got that stretch in the 90s during the Dave Brown years, the Danny Cannell years, all the years that we, got to the playoffs a couple of times, but there was no run. It was in between the Parcells and Coughlin years. He was there for, the Dan Reeves years and the Jim Fossil years, and unfortunately didn't get a chance to see the good times there. But yeah, like I said, I think he got kind of underrated at the time, and I think a lot of people kind of forgot about him in Giants, fandom even at that point. But 8 years, solid starting corner. You can't ask for much more out of a player, that's for sure. All right, Next up, Mark Collins. So I know a guy that a lot of people think pretty fondly from those Parcells years. Second-round pick out of 1986. Played with the Giants from 86 to 93. So this guy was here for both of the Parcells rings. He was a guy who started some games as a backup. Others in 86 was cemented as a full-on starter for the 90 season during that second Super Bowl, obviously. Another guy that never got to go to a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro, but was just a solid starter for a good number of years there. You're talking 86, 87, 88, 89. That's 4 right there, plus 4, 8 years. Same as Felipe Sparks, 8 years. Anytime you can spend 8 years with one team as a starting corner. Again, keep in mind, this is like, I want to say it's necessarily to the extent of running backs, but corner is not the position you play for 15 years.
No,
not.
Let's move over, figure something else to play, like safety.
Yeah, exactly. You move over to safety or something like that at that point, or maybe you move inside and be a slot corner or something like that, where you lose a little bit of speed. And he even played after us. He played until 1998, so he was a good number of years in the league overall. And a guy that, if you ever listen to the Giants Insider podcast, there, he was a guy that they've interviewed a few times as well, and those guys obviously are a little more the age. I'll put it that way, not to be mean about it. They're a couple years older than Rob and I. They're more the age where they grew up watching those Giants specifically, whereas Rob and I were pretty much in diapers and going to elementary school at those years. So, the guys that watched and were around for that generation always speak very fondly of Mark Collins there, as John Anderson here, who I know was from that generation, says M. Collins was great. So was Kerry, except for Super Bowl. Yeah.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah. All righty, guys. Let's get into the corners that did start making Pro Bowls and All Pros now. The guys that were, have legitimate claim to being the best corners for the years they played for the Giants. Some of these guys, unfortunately, had a pretty short career with us as well. Maybe not a short career overall, but a short career with the Giants, which is kind of a shame here. The first one here is one that I wish was still on the New York Giants. I liked him as a player overall. I think, unfortunately, Gettleman backed us into a corner with him. But James Bradbury, second-round pick of the Carolina Panthers in 2016, signed obviously as a free agent in 2020, released in 22 for cap reasons. So he only had 2 seasons with us overall, and obviously still plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. And as much as we still hate to say it, still playing at a quality level as well, being one of the better corners in the league for the Eagles as well. Obviously, he has the benefit of being CB2 now for the Eagles, which is going to even help his numbers and help his look overall. But was a Pro Bowl, obviously, for us in 21. If you remember the writing on the wall for him that year was a guy that wasn't going to get tons of interceptions, but a guy that basically would shut down whoever you gave him for that time period. Kind of like we talk about Adoree Jackson right now.
About to say, very similar to a current player.
But the difference with him and Adoree is Adoree Jackson depends on physical skills, whereas James Bradbury, while he's not a slouch, he's not nearly as quick as a guy like Adoree Jackson was. He's a very smart football player. He can sense what movement you're about to make and make that adjustment, and never really loses the receiver. To go ahead and not have that problem. We talked about this with the when we first signed James Bradbury, you and I. This is obviously before we had the podcast. But if you look at the players that the NFC South had back then when he was playing with the Panthers before we got him, you had Julio Jones, you had Mike Evans, and you had Michael Thomas on the other 3 teams in the NFC South. 3 of the best receivers in football. Yeah. And he was doing a damn good job on those guys every single time.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's somebody who I still think is kind of underrated for whatever reason. I think it's probably because he doesn't have that special speed that people love to see in corners. He doesn't have the makeup speed. He doesn't need it.
I was about to say, he never needed it. So that's something that should be talked about, that that his football IQ and his natural talent beat his physical attributes that were lack.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if he did have it. He'd be like one of the top. He'd be probably like all pro at this point to be,
We would have had to get cut because we couldn't afford him.
Yeah, we would have found a way to afford him if he had the speed as well on top of that. Probably not. Damn you, Gettleman.
Yeah. Damn you.
Dirty ape.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, a guy that I wish we still had on the team. Definitely. Imagine how good this defense would be with him and Adoree Jackson still both on there. We could even still go ahead and throw in the rookie there and have him as a third corner at that point for whenever Adoree gets hurt. I hate to say
Fair
it.
enough.
He gets hurt every year. It is what it is. All righty. Next up. This is a guy that also is a little more recent. Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins. Second-round pick out of the Rams in 2012. Signed on as a free agent in 2016, part of that big 2016 class that we got with him and Snacks and all those guys. And Vernon Wells. No, Vernon Wells baseball. Olivier Vernon. Wrong guy. Wrong Vernon.
Wrong sport.
And then we had the one playoff season there. That's the whole boat picture with the wide receivers year and everything. And he was a stud guy at that point. Who was that first year was a shutdown corner. Absolute shutdown. Looks like one of the top corners in the entire league. No, he wasn't there on the boat. He's not a wide receiver. He was a Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro in 2016. But personality conflicts, I guess, is the best way to word it. And there was a lot of them on that team, let's be honest. He ended up getting traded halfway through the 2019 season. Use some verbiage, I'll put it that way, that some people didn't particularly care for on Twitter. Word that starts with R, I'll put it that way. And yeah, I mean, he was gone at that point there. I mean, this man had conflicts with Ben McAdoo when he was there with them. He had conflicts with Pat Shurmur, even worse in 19. I mean, this was a guy that had all the talent in the world to have a very, very long career. And unfortunately, his head gets in the way. So we traded him to Saints. He's currently a free agent. Did play 2 games last year with the San Francisco.
He played 2 years last year. That's impressive.
He did play 2 years last year. Time after time. But yeah, played 2 games with the 49ers last year, so who knows? I mean, obviously, when you play only 2 games, that's not a good sign. He was on the practice squad for most of the year for them, so he still wants to play football. But at this point, his career is probably done. Again, this is
probably. I mean, you're also talking about the Niners. That's one of the better defenses in the league.
But he's a practice squad guy. Anybody could have plucked him.
Yeah.
So this is going into his 11th season. We've talked about how corners don't always have the best, as far as that longevity. So, yeah, that's a guy that, unfortunately, like I said, wasted talent. If he ever actually was get his head into the game, he would have probably been, like I said, 16 was showing you what he could have been. And what he could have ended up being was a true shutdown corner for many years. He had the physical gifts. He just unfortunately got in his own way.
With name.
All right, we got a couple more comments here from John Anderson, who wants to put us into a time machine, apparently. He says, I was around with you young whippersnappers, watched my Giants DVDs at championships and Super Bowls. Jeff Hostetler deserves more respect than he gets. So cool watching Joe Morris play too. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with the Haas is he doesn't get the credit because he didn't get a ton of time to play with the Giants. Again, he was a Pro Bowler with the Raiders after he left there as well. He wasn't a slouch quarterback. He just wasn't nearly as good as Sims. So,
true.
Then he says, our first Super Bowl, Phil Sims, 22 of 25, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns to Bavaro, McConkey, Mawat, and Manuel. That's 4 guys. Hold on. Maybe that wasn't the guys who got the Super Bowl. I got the touchdowns too. He says that defense, LT, Carsons, Banks, Elvis was in the building. Patterson, not Presley, LOL. Gatorade splashes. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've watched the 86 Super Bowl plenty of times.
Let's say,
on
did you
tape.
just watch that DVD?
I was as DVD. Who is a DVD player nowadays? I was 4 years
Yeah,
old.
three,
when it
got it.
happened. So I was 4. Rob was a little younger. So yeah, we're not going to remember those games live, obviously.
I was still in diapers.
I believe wasn't that the same Super Bowl, also the '86 one with Whitney Houston doing the Star Spangled Banner and the very
I believe
patriotic
so.
get up she had as well. I think so. See, historic Super Bowl. Alrighty, guys. Next up is a little bit more of a modern guy here as well, and then we get into some oldies after this here to end with the last few. Dominique Rogers Cromartie, DRC. First round pick of the Cardinals back in 2008. Signed as a free agent 2014. Played with the Giants from 2014 to 2017. And he still played until 2019 overall. Was a Pro Bowler in 2015. Second team All-Pro 2016, which is funny because how do you get second team All-Pro but not get Pro Bowl?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to ask Andrew Thomas that. Shots fired.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, DRC, dude, is one of those guys that, like, I almost hate calling him just a corner because this was the guy that played wherever you just needed to play as a defensive back. He was an old school defensive back kind of guy. Yeah, he was a very good corner, but he'd move into the slot. He'd move into the safety position. He played wherever he needed to play on the defense. This was the guy that you look at, like, his career ends and you don't say, oh my God, Pro Bowler, like crazy Hall of Famer and like that. But you sit there and say, dude, that's a solid career. That's a solid career. Like, this is a guy that you're going to remember for a little bit there. And obviously now it's been, it doesn't feel like this long ago, but 6 years since he played for the Giants. And
I guess.
honestly, he might have still played for the Giants if it wasn't for him and Ben McAdoo. Him and McAdoo just did not get along whatsoever. Like, absolutely did not get along whatsoever. Like oil and vinegar, big time.
He also didn't get along with a lot of people.
What was that?
He also didn't get along with a lot of people. McAdoo.
Oh, no, McAdoo was definitely problems. I don't know if the mustache was setting people the wrong way or what the deal is, but...
What's your mustache you say to me? Let's go.
My mustache.
Mustache. Yeah. A mustache. Fighting words right now.
But yeah, I mean, DRC, again, a guy that, is a quality player, unfortunately played in the latter parts of Eli's career because he would have been very helpful to have in the earlier years when we were actually winning a couple Super Bowls with Eli and all. But yeah, good player, good career. By all accounts of his teammates, not his coach, Ben McAdoo, but all his teammates said very nice things about him throughout his career. And it seemed like a lot of the players took his side in whatever happened between him and Ben McAdoo as well. So, definitely a guy that is thought fondly of by Giants fans as well. You never hear any Giants fans talk trash really about him either. So, good solid career there. All righty. Now on to the top 4 players. Top 4. That's what I was saying. Like, don't get me wrong. DRC, good player. But if you told me going into this that DRC be number 5 for us,
yeah,
I would never have thought DRC number 5.
The Democratic Republic of Congo would be on making the list.
I don't think that's what we meant.
Oh. Yeah,
number 4. Willie Williams, 8th round pick of the New York Giants in 1965. Played with the Giants in 65. Then went to go play for Oakland in 66 in the AFL. They were going back to the AFL, NFL days here. So he played 1 year in the AFL. Then went back to the Giants in 67 and played with us for 67 to 73. Led the NFL in interceptions in 1968. Was a Pro Bowler in 1969. And this is a guy that you don't really ever hear much about in Giants lore. And I think a lot of that's because when he played, let's be honest, he played in the crappiest time, basically be a Giant. minus the Gettleman years.
Fair.
This was the times when the NFL was forced George Young on Wellington Mara because the Giants were so bad for so long. Like, that's when the years he was playing there. But you can't dispute that the guy was a very good player for a good number of years there. Anytime you're leading the league in interceptions, that's an annual thing. That's not I did this for the week. Like, you were there for the whole year excelling. And again, Pro Bowler the next year as well. Again, weird to see, you lead the NFL in interceptions. You don't get to the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah,
you did something right.
Yeah.
Pro Bowl is so weird. You get players that don't deserve it that go, and players that do deserve it that don't go. I mean, this year they had a backup quarterback on the AFC.
I was about to say you had what's his face from Baltimore?
Yeah, Huntley.
Yeah,
backup. Guy came and started his own team, but you put him as a backup. Okay.
He's good at the backup position. He was the best backup.
He was the
on that team.
Pro Bowl backup.
He's the only one that had the most experience.
So anyway, Willie Williams, number 4 on our list here. All right, number 3. And this is a guy that had a relatively short time with the Giants here. But in his time that he did have with the Giants was freaking hell of a player. Honestly, you could make the case that if he had played his whole career with the Giants, he probably would have been number 1. He was that good. You could easily say that he's the most talented corner that the Giants ever had. Because he's just that good of a career overall. Just, didn't really at that point, have a very long career. And that's Eric Barnes, 4th round pick of the Chicago Bears. The Bears, 1958. That's how far back we're going here. 1958. Traded to the New York Giants in 1961. Played with the Giants from 1961 to 1964. So just 4 seasons with the Giants overall. And I don't mean the hotel. We traded him off to the Cleveland Browns after that in 1964. And he played with the Browns until 1971. So he had a pretty damn good career overall. Was a Pro Bowler in each of his 4 seasons with the New York Giants. First team All-Pro in 1961. Second team All-Pro in 1962. So think about that. In his 4 seasons, Pro Bowl every single time, half the time he had an All-Pro team. Not a bad 4-year stretch there. Overall, for his career, he had 6 Pro Bowls, and 4 times did he make one of the AP All-Pro teams there. So 4 of his 6 Pro Bowls were with the New York Giants. 2 of his 4 All-Pro teams were with the New York Giants. So we had him for his prime best years of his career. But we only had him for 4 years. So it's kind of hard to put him on that list. I can tell you when I did a lot of research on this guy overall, again, obviously, I wasn't around those days.
Well, man, was pretty wonderful then.
Yeah, exactly. We're going back in time here. My dad was 5 years old when he was drafted. I mean, he's my grandpa's age, basically. So when I was looking at stuff on him, you find a lot of stuff on the Cleveland Browns on him as well. The Cleveland Browns hold him in high regard there. And he played 7 years with them. So obviously he played a very good amount of time with them. But for a guy that played 7 years and had 1 Pro Bowl with them, that's kind of odd to see. His best years were with the Giants. His second best years was the first 3 years he had with the Bears. But like I said, the Brown fans really hold him in high regard for making it for quite a long time with the team overall and being a solid player for all those years. Again, if he was with Giant the whole time, he'd probably be number 1. He's that good. Not quite a Hall of Famer.
Bears fans aren't really used to fans. Players draft for long haul, I guess. Yeah, I said the Bears again. I said the Browns fans, I guess, haven't been used to players want to stay and be there for a long time.
Well, that
And a
was
long
back
time.
when the Browns weren't bad. Keep in mind, the Browns haven't been crap forever. Just in
Oh,
our
I know.
lifetime. The old school Browns were usually a pretty decent team. It's just the 90s and onward. They were horrible, basically right before they left. And, also, their new version has been pretty much crap from the get-go. All right. On to number 2. And this is a little bit newer here. We're gonna have some of the people in the chat here that have been around a little longer than us have a little more firsthand knowledge of watching this guy play live here. Mark Haynes, first round pick of the New York Giants in 1980. Played with the Giants 1980 to 1985. So unfortunately, just missed the Super Bowl seasons there that we had there for the Giants in the Parcells years, but was there for the beginning of the Parcells era overall, which kind of mixed results there overall. We talked about that before when Parcells started. It wasn't all, roses and, wasn't like it was with the start of the Brian Dable where it was like success from the get-go. There was some rough times in the very beginning there. He ended up playing some more years there, 4 more years with the Broncos overall. So had a 10-year career, so not a bad career overall. In his time with the Giants, his 6 years, he was a Pro Bowler in 82, 83, and 84. He was a first-team All-Pro in 82 and 84. He was a second-team All-Pro in 81 and 83. So, again, you're talking 3 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pro teams in 6 years. That's a pretty damn good. Again, this is another guy that you don't think about as a Hall of Famer.
2/3 of his Giants career,
he's in that Hall of Very Good.
Yeah,
he's in that Hall of Very Good. And he had some injuries right before he left us. At that point, was never the same player with the Broncos. So it wasn't like, unfortunately, he continued with that kind of stretch, because if he did, he probably would have been a Hall of Famer. Played 5 games with us the last year in 85, played 11 with the Broncos in 86, which is ironic because keep in mind the Giants played the Broncos in the 86 Super Bowl. So weird scenario there for him at that point.
Yeah.
Played 12 for the Broncos in 87. 2 of the 4 seasons he had with the Broncos, he didn't even start. So, like I said, he was unfortunately just not the same player anymore that he was after injury. So, but he was a guy that while he was with the Giants was a pretty damn good player overall. And he did have some success where he at least did make it to a couple Super Bowls with the Broncos. Keep in mind, it wasn't just 86. The Broncos made 3 Super Bowls in his 4 years he was there with them. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good career, amazing time with the Giants overall. Unfortunately, just couldn't keep it going to where he could have been considered for the Pro Bowl. All right, guys. Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame. All right, guys. Number one. I think it's pretty obvious who it's going to be. And luckily, Deb was right here to call it already with Eli Apple. No kidding. No, Deb, it's not Eli Apple.
Let's spit out my water.
As much as his mom tried.
Class shot coming out of that draft.
Number 1's got to be the guy that a lot of us grew up with, the guy that you listened to on the radio talk about the Giants nonstop, Dick Lynch. 6th-round pick of the Washington team there in 58. Went to the Giants in 59, played for them from 59 to 66. Was a second-team All-Pro in 61. Was a steez here. It's fighting.
Cucumbers.
It won.
Yeah.
So first-team All-Pro and Pro Bowler in 63. Led the NFL in interception both in 61 and 63 there. So good long career with the Giants overall. Had the accolades to go with it there. And was a guy that, you look at him also and go and look at what he did for the Giants overall. not just as a player, but the long-term career is why he made number one. It's kind of like a Mark or Dick kind of scenario for number one. But you gotta at least look at part of what he did as far as what he meant to the Giants organization overall. He was their color commentator for New York Giants radio from 1967 to 2008. The man's in the Giants Ring of Honor. The only one of these players that we're talking about today that's in the Giants Ring of Honor. That's how highly thought of he is within the Giants organization. I mean, and he's a Jersey boy too. Oh yes. So
good old Jersey.
As John says, what kind of girly sneeze was that, Drew? ROFL. John, I don't know what you mean. Is girly a positive thing, a negative thing here? Are you saying a girl can't sneeze?
2023, don't judge.
John? Is that where we're going, John? Seriously? Wow. I didn't think you were that kind of guy, John.
Yeah. You not get all your bacteria and germs out of your nasal passage.
On the plus side, I can breathe out of my right nostril for the first time in hours.
Yay.
But yeah, I mean, so Dick was so good that in 2000. Wow. We go from misogyny to wow. Not child friendly this episode. I'll go by last name. Then Lynch was so good that in 1963, he was actually third in voting for the UPI MVP for the entire league. That's how good he was. Not only did he lead the league in interceptions, he also led the interception returns for yards, had 251 yards in return yards on those interceptions, had 3 touchdowns. Like, that's one hell of a season there overall. I don't know if we lost Rob there. Rob hasn't moved in a couple minutes. We might have lost Rob. We'll see. You there, Rob? We did lose him. All right, he'll come back. They always come back. So, yeah, like I said, that's our top 10 there for you guys as far as the corners in Giants history. It's got to be kind of interesting to see what happens overall, you know, as you look at this and go, okay, are the Giants ever going to get a Hall of Fame caliber kind of corner? It's weird to see a team with such a rich history not have, you know, a couple of corners that fit to that kind of mold overall. You know, can Deontay Banks fit that eventually? Hopefully. Oof. You know, be lucky to have that. That's for sure. All righty, guys. We got a couple comments here before we wrap up here for the episode here. So let's see here. First one here. We got Deb saying, I thought Houston was one of the Coughlin Super Bowls. And she put another comment there as well. Let's confirm here. Whitney Houston Super Bowl national anthem. 1991 was the Super Bowl. So yeah, that's 1991 Super Bowl. Whitney Houston. Are they including that? Is that the? I want to say, because again, 90 was the year, but 91 at that point was the Super Bowl. So you're looking at that would have been the one that the Giants won against the Bears. The Bills, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. So yeah, I was right. It was one of the ones. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, she said Houston series. Houston sang in 91. All right. Let's see what else we got here. New comments here. Let's see. John says, didn't know Dave Mega got into so much trouble doing time still. Now I think, yeah, he's had some big issues there overall with some legal issues there. I don't remember what they were exactly, but obviously in your jail, you did something wrong, probably, hopefully, because you don't want innocent people in jail. Rob's back. There he is.
I'm back.
Back in the New York groove. You're freezing again, though.
Yeah, my phone died. Hopefully it doesn't die again.
Trouble. It's crazy, but he was awesome. Crazy out of jail, and he's still what? I don't know. OJ. Oh, crazy OJ out of jail, and he's still there. Simpson, not Anderson. Yeah, OJ is OJ should probably be in jail. Yeah. John says 1965, before me, you whippersnapper. LOL. Says, John says Felipe Sparks was great too. His daughter won American Idol. She sang national anthem for us at Super Bowl 42, I believe. Yeah, I think she did do one of the Super Bowls. That's Jordan Sparks. We were talking about that earlier. She was, I think she's still actually even doing new music and all at that point there, but I haven't heard anything about her in quite some time. That's for sure.
Talk about the
Let's see. Here we go. Jordan Sparks, Super Bowl. Let's see. I'm trying to see what year it was. It doesn't say. 2008. So yeah, that was that was the first of the Eli Super Bowls there after the 2007 season. So yeah, Jordan Sparks did sing it for the Giants. That's kind of cool that she got to do with that. John says, think Felipe played opposite Seahorn, if I recall. I think John missed the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. John says, what kind of girly clapping was that, Roberto? Ooh, John is just bringing the misogyny here today. I don't know what happened, John. Who hurt you? Who hurt you? He's snapshotting at Roberto's smile, LOL. I think it's when you were frozen because you were smiling when you were freezing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Deb says Dave Meggett was arrested for raping a college student. So, yeah, he's in jail for good reasons then if he did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it was something bad he did. And I'm sure one day we will end up doing a special teams episode. And, yeah, he'll probably be on there because he was one hell of a special teamer. But, yeah, obviously not one hell of a person, it seems. Convicting of raping in 2009. So yeah, he's been in jail for quite some time now. So doing stuff like that. Yeah, feel free to sit in jail all you want. Because he was also arrested before for sexually assaulting a 26-year-old woman in 2001 as well. So this wasn't his first time even getting in trouble here. Googling Dave Meggett apparently is a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. Anyway, back to happier news here. Sheesh. So yeah, guys, we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be going over all the details on the. We talked about doing a travel episode. If you plan on going to any of the away games for the New York Giants, we're going to go over that. Some of the stuff there is to do at each of the spots that you could be potentially going to see the New York Giants at. Now, keep in mind as well that when we go over that, we may have to change that up depending on what happens because some news has been coming down and some rumors with Saquon Barkley. I know that a lot of people are posting videos of him with his interview he did for another podcast in a Bumblebee sweater. It was a weird sweater he's wearing. It wasn't us, no. It was a really weird-looking sweater. Like, if he was on our show, I'd be like, dude, you got to get rid of that. Look at the girl from the Blind Melon No Rain video.
Yeah.
You remember that song. Everybody remembers that song. Oh, yes. All I can say is my life is pretty plain. But yeah, I mean, he's going to say, again, we're not going to sit there and go over every single comment that Saquon Barkley has. Saquon Barkley's job right now is to stay relevant, stay in the news, threaten a long-term holdout, threaten to miss games, threaten to miss the season, and try to at least make it as difficult as possible for the Giants as he can. I'm not going to play this game. His job right now is to sign the contract that he has and then revisit this next year. Or he could have taken the money and been a top 5 paid running back in the league, which he chose not to do. It's his prerogative. I'm not knocking him for doing it.
Yeah.
But that was his options. He chose his path. Now he has to sit there and take that path.
He did the right thing in his mind.
Exactly. Owning his mind, but still.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But, if anything big actually happens news-wise, obviously we'll change course. Otherwise, we'll see you guys tomorrow for the travel episode. Oh, yes, we'll get our travel gear going. Perhaps we'll break out some luggage and all. I do have a nice little piece of luggage.
We're going to go back to London.
Oh, no, we're not going back to London there. Chip, chop, chotty-o. That was last
year. Good.
So, yeah, guys, again, we'll be back on tomorrow night for that for you guys. Again, if you're watching us live here, if you haven't already, hit the like, hit the subscribe, share it to a friend, leave a comment, hit the bell if you're on YouTube so you get all the notifications whenever we go live at that point there. Keep in mind that we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Rob's favorite, my LinkedIn profile. That's where we're live on all the time. We also are available afterwards if you're not able to watch live on those as well. We go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we're on audio podcast platforms, usually about an hour or two after the show is over as well. So whether you listen to Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, all the major ones out there, we are, of course, on for every episode as that as well. If we don't put on audio podcasts, it's very rare. The only things we really haven't done is like the draft episodes, because those were like 4 hours long. We were live for the draft. That'd have been a very long podcast. So, all righty, guys. We'll see you tomorrow night there. Appreciate you guys listening in. And as always, Giant fans, go G-Man!
Go G-Man!
Go G-Man!
G-Man!
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support. If you made it this long, you must have enjoyed it. So I am sure you have followed us on all the social media platforms. Of course, you have subscribed to the show on your favorite app as well and given us a top rating. Right? Right? Right?